Okay, I want to welcome everybody to Mass Bay RE's third Thursday online for January 21st. And sorry for the delay in getting things started on Facebook. So anyway, I want to welcome everybody. And we got, I think, a really interesting program for you tonight. So just a few brief announcements. First of all, we're still trying to line up programs for February and March. So a couple people contacted me about things and kind of lost track of some of them. So if you had contacted me about something earlier, please do so again. And sorry, Donald Nevin's doing something here. Anyway, so we won't be doing any live meetings at church for a while. It'll probably be at least March, maybe into April, before we, or May, before we can do that. We'll have to see. It all depends somewhat on the church. So for those of you who are members and are wondering about Callboy, the November-December Callboy seems to have been snagged for a lot of people in the troubles of the post office. I spoke with a member today who admittedly is out in Nevada, but still hadn't received his yet. I haven't received my second copy. At some point, I'm not quite sure what we'll do. I'm sure there's a number of people who haven't received the November-December Callboy. That was mailed a month ago. January Callboy is still in the works. Hopefully it'll go out next week. So we'll have to see about that. So anyway, that's about all we've got for announcements. I wanted to just bring one other thing to folks' attention. There's a documentary called Riding the Rails. That's going to be streaming on Amazon and iTunes beginning January 26, 2021. It's basically, I guess it's sort of a documentary story. It's a documentary of quite a number of young people back in their teens who basically hopped freight trains and rode around the country. Apparently there were some 250,000 people that did that. So anyway, this premieres on 26th of January on Amazon and iTunes. And if you want to check it out, the web link is ridingtherails-themovie.com. So that might be interesting. Not sure what it costs. I'm not sure whether it's going to be a fee, even if it's on Amazon. So anyway.
Dave, do you mind giving that URL again or whatever that address was?
ridingtherails-themovie.com. I may try to remember to put a link up on our website about that. So anyway, want to get things going here. For those of you who are looking at the screen here, the panel for our third Thursday programs generally consists of the officers and directors of Mass Bay. So most of the folks you see on the screen are officers and directors of the club. Kate Jurow is our speaker tonight and a member of Mass Bay. Herb Fuller is a member of Mass Bay who did engineer school on the Valley Railroad some time ago and also did some firing back in the day. And up in, I don't know what corner he's in on your screen, but Steve Murphy is a member of the Amherst Railway Society and actually attended Fireman School with Kate. And has actually been back several times to do it. And he's calling in from a business trip in West Virginia right now. So anyway, without further ado, we'll get right to the program, and I think you're going to find this to be a fascinating program with some great photography and action shots and an interesting story as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Kate. And just by way of introduction, I first met Kate a few years ago when she came to one of our third Thursday meetings at the church in Waban. And she was wearing choo-choo shoes, sneakers that were looked like little steam locomotives, and I guess they made some sort of sound when she walked and lit up a little bit. It was all quite cool, and she was a part of our show crew for a couple of times, I think, and then came forward with this idea, which originally she was going to do as a little segment on a First Tuesday Members Night program. And then as she started organizing all the material she had, she realized it was way more than the 10 or 15 minutes we'd like for a First Tuesday. So here we are. So Kate, it's all yours. Take it away.
Okay. First, I would like to apologize for any boo-boos that happened because Dave and I just ran through this earlier today, and okay. Share sound. I hope I've got this right, and we'll see if this sounds good. Okay.
Oh, great.
Did you click on the?
I did. Is
Okay,
it not?
good.
Looking good.
Okay. All righty. Here we go. Okay, Fireman School on the Cumbres Toltec Railroad. And one thing I'm very proud of, I'm only the second woman who ever took this program, so that's kind of fun for me. People ask me how, what's a girl like you doing in a place like this? How did you get here? Well, I actually, there's a Take the Throttle program on the Essex Steam Train, the Valley Railroad. I did that a couple of times, and I really, really loved it. And shortly after that, I was actually out on the Cumbres and Toltec, which is in northern New Mexico. And I learned that they had a steam school that lasts for 4 days. And I was like, okay, where do I sign up? And so I did. This is actually the parlor car on the Cumbres and Toltec, and it's certainly worth taking if you're up in that area. But it's a very popular program, and there is a 1-year wait. They're backed up, I think, at this point, at least a year. So 1 year later, found me on the Lakeshore Limited. I took the train out there. The Lakeshore Limited, Boston to Chicago, and Chicago to Albuquerque. I was on the Southwest Chief, and that got me to steam school in the Cumbres and Toltec. I wanted to do engineer, but because the Cumbres and Toltec is very traditional, you have to do fireman first because that's the apprentice position. So that's how I ended up in Fireman School, because I had to get a fireman certificate first. And just as an overview, the steam school is 4 days. The students work together in the cab in shifts. And I think in the time that we were in the school, we had 6 fireman students and 4 engineering students. And I'll explain about that a little further down the line. Just to give you a little history of the Cumbres and Toltec, it is an actual old railroad line, and it's the Rio Grande narrow gauge San Juan extension. Was built about 1880 to service the silver mines in the San Juan Mountains, which are in northern New Mexico. It was never converted to standard gauge, and over time, it kind of lost business, became increasingly obsolete. I think for a while, they were getting some business with the lumber trade, but that kind of passed away. And in the 1960s, the line was abandoned. It was purchased jointly by the states of New Mexico and Colorado in 1970 for the purpose of actually creating a tourist attraction up in that area because they wanted to create jobs. It's a really pretty part of the world, and there was nothing there to see. So New Mexico and Colorado bought the what was left of the Cumbres and Toltec for a whopping, what, about $550,000 and all the stuff you can see. So I guess that's kind of a bargain. I do want to point out, while we're here, this little locomotive, it's the 168, because we're going to hear from that locomotive later. So just make a note of that. Features of the Cumbres and Toltec. It's 64 miles long, so it's, I know I went on the Valley Railroad, and that's like, what, 10 miles, but this is 64 miles of track. There are 2 tunnels, 3 trestles, a very impressive gorge, a very winding road that goes through 11 state border crossings. It crosses the Cumbres Pass at over 10,000 feet, which I believe makes it the highest still operating railroad in the continental United States. And of course, there is a very famous 4% grade, about which more later. And this is their fleet of little Mikados, and I think they are Baldwin K-36s. I think that's what they are. I think they're mostly from around the 1920s, that's my guess. So this is a map of the route, and if you look really closely, you can kind of see why it's narrow gauge, because there are curves here that are almost circles. There's one here, there's a really impressive one here, there's a cool curve here, there's a loop here, and you can see this is the state line. So that little railroad just winds back and forth over across that line, and it's really fun, because you're not just going up and down a flat track. There's a lot of challenges there for a crew, especially a crew who's just beginning to learn what they're doing. So I guess the first thing I'm going to do is talk about the experience. What was it like day to day to be a student on the 4-day program of the Cumbres and Toltec? This is the scenic great metropolis of downtown Chama, and this is about as busy as it gets. So this gives you an idea of the kind of place we were in. And it really didn't matter that there was a lot of nightlife, because we really didn't have much time for it, and we were exhausted at the end of the day. The days start at around 6 a.m. usually and end around 6, so it's a 12-hour day. The first day, we spent most of it in the classroom and went into the yard in the late afternoon. The second day, we went from Chama, which is like the southern part, to Cumbres and back. The third day, we went all the way from Chama to Antonito, which is the far end, and then we were bused back. And then the fourth day, they bused us up to Antonito, and we ran the train back down to Chama. So that's an overview of the days. Day 1, I call this death by PowerPoint, because it was really not what I was expecting. They gave us a lot of steam basics, a lot of safety, of course, the history of the railroad. We learned a lot about how it operates. The Cumbres and Toltec considers itself a historic site, so it actually tries to operate using the old paper-based systems and the kind of paperwork and train tags and stuff that they used to use. I wish I could tell you what that is, but I have totally forgotten. They gave us a big book about it. Of course, they also use modern methods as well, because it's a single track and it has to be insured. So they all have all the latest modern stuff, but when they plan the day, the conductors have all this really old-fashioned paperwork, which I think is pretty cool. And this was the late afternoon on the first day, and this was very exciting for me, because what they did was every student got to go into the cab to whichever position they were going to be, fireman or engineer, and they kind of familiarized us with the gauges and the dials and all the stuff we would be using. And they were trying to show me how to start up the water feed from the tender, which is, of course, very important. And I tried to do that, and I heard this horrible noise, and the trainer who was standing behind me said, "You broke it." And I'm like, oh crap, I broke the locomotive. I was really scared, but what he meant was I broke the water flow through that Venturi system. So that's how I started my career as a fireman, by breaking it. This is actually a video of what happened at that point, and I'll just show you part of it. This is me breaking the locomotive. Where the water comes out. And they're very, very good trainers are really good. Flow to watch this coming out here. You pull a lever, and that lets the water come out. Here comes the water, and now I have to push that, and then absolutely horrible noise, and everything stopped, and that's when he said you broke it. So that's me on my first day on the Cumbres Toltec as a fireman, and I broke it. Now I think I'll just talk about what it was like to be on that train every day. And we actually, as I said, we actually had a train. We weren't just in the cab of the locomotive. We were pulling a train behind us, and it was a freight train because, of course, they will not allow the students to pull the passenger cars for obvious reasons, because you'll knock on all the passengers down on their keisters, among other things. But so this is all authentic equipment. These are all real old freight cars. Back here are 2 gondola cars, and that's where the people who are not in the cab hang out and spend their time, and that is a really gorgeous place to be because the scenery is wonderful. At the end of this train is a caboose, about which more later, and you'll notice looking down the track, this little yellow thing, that's a fire car that follows behind us because, of course, we're in very, very dry, this is key, very high-risk fire territory, and of course we're in a cinder emitting beast, and so the fire truck follows behind and just takes care of any smoldering that might show up. Also, look, this is all track back here. This is the single track, so this gives you an idea of how loopy the whole thing is. It's really something to ride in. Okay, this is the circle curve, and this particular curve is almost a circle, and it's funny because we started going around and I thought we were just going to continue going in a circle and the whole thing would curve in on itself. And if you look closely at the end of this video, you'll see the fire car following. So this is sitting in the gondola going around, I don't remember which curve this was, one of the circle curves. Watch this curve. Watch this. So you can see there's a lot of curves in this route, and they're pretty dramatic. You never have to worry about seeing the locomotive because you always see the locomotive because you're always going around a curve.
Excuse me, Kate, could you
Yeah?
just make sure you speak directly into your microphone?
Oh, okay, sorry.
Having difficulty hearing you when you get back a little bit.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thanks.
Yep. Um, is this better now? I guess it is.
I guess so. We'll see.
Okay. Crew changes happen about every 40 minutes, and in every in every crew, there are two firemen and one engineer. And so every 40 minutes, one set, you get an assignment and one set goes out and the next set comes in. They try to find a um, piece of track where it's easy and flat, but sometimes it is not. And there are times when we found ourselves kind of actually hanging, trying to go along the train on an embankment and kind of hanging off the side of a car, which is very exciting. Um, so there were, in addition to all the students on the train, we had, of course, the two instructors, the fireman instructor and the engineer instructor, and we also had a conductor and a brakeman. So this is another tight curve. So you can see it's pretty dramatic territory there. One other really fun place to hang out was in the caboose, and this is not a restored caboose. I believe this is actually a replica that was built on an old, possibly a boxcar frame. I'm not sure, but it's absolutely gorgeous. It's just a beautiful place to sit in, and they just did a beautiful job restoring it. Um,
Kate, yeah, a couple people have identified that first curve as
yes, yep,
Tanglefoot curve.
okay. I can't remember the name. I have a memory like a sieve, so yeah. So these are some of the photos of the caboose. This is up in the cupola. And I had no idea this is how you get up there. You put your feet on these little wedgy things and kind of work your way up. So getting up there looks like this, and you can also do some gymnastics if you're inclined, but it's a really, really fun place to hang out. And this, I guess, is part of what everybody wants to see, which is in the cab, which I call fire and water and cows, because I guess when I started fireman school, I assumed that the fireman is responsible for the fire on a steam locomotive, but of course, the fireman is also responsible for everything to do with the water and how to, how to make sure that the water is getting into the boiler, which is pretty important because if it doesn't, bad things happen. So the other thing that the fireman is responsible for, in addition to fire and water, is watching out for her side of the track. And I had never realized this, but when you sit in a steam locomotive, you're either on the engineer's side or the fireman's side, which is the left. And you can't see the other side of the locomotive. So if the track is curving to the right, then the fireman can't really see the track. So the engineer has to watch it. And when the track curves to the left, of course, the engineer can't see the track, so the fireman has to watch it. So one of your responsibilities is also to watch out for obstacles on the track. And I had a lot of fun because I was the first person who got to call cows on my trip, because I was sitting looking out the window and there's a herd of cows crossing the track. So I hollered, cows, cows. And I don't know what the engineer did. I think they cut back on the throttle. I don't think they put the brake on, but it's very exciting. Also, shoveling, I was really scared about this because I was scared of how much work it would be. You're standing on a really shaky platform, as you will see in the videos. And when you're standing, one foot is on the locomotive and the other foot is actually on the tender. So you're on two really shaky platforms. There's a plate in between, but it's still really hard to balance. And you're trying to shovel into what on a shaky platform is a really tiny hole. And I swear to God, when the first time that firebox opened, I thought it was like looking into the sun. It was really scary. So, the next shot is a shot of in the cab, and I can't remember where this was. I know it's a pretty hot fire. Um, Oops. Okay. All right. I just wanted to say, we had to watch out for check the water. So the fireman checks the water levels, the pressure. The fireman is the one who decides when to add water. You have to gauge how to start the flow. You have to open the valves just right, as you saw earlier. And for me, it was kind of learning how to operate a manual clutch. It was that kind of feel which made it fun. For the fire, the grade and load determines how hot the fire has to be. You need to keep the fire even throughout the box, which in a hand fire system means you have to throw the coal to the places that look cooler. So the whole thing is tricky and it's physically hard. I do have to say that we did not do any of the prep or the cleaning afterwards. That was all done for us. So, we didn't have to worry about cleaning out the ash or anything like this. So, yep, little engines get hungry going uphill on a 4% grade. This was very exciting for me because I got the crew shift that was assigned to the 4% grade. And I was kind of nervous about that because I thought, can I really keep the fire going? And I can actually only shovel about 2/3 of what a guy can shovel. We figured this out. A man shovels about 14 pounds, and I could only get probably 10 or 11. So when I was shoveling, I had to shovel more continuously than a guy. I could move the same amount of coal. It just took me longer, so I needed to spend more time shoveling. In this next video, you'll see this is a fairly hot fire that I'm shoveling. The train is not moving at this point. I'm not sure why, but this gives you an idea of what it's like shoveling inside a cab. Oh, and at the very beginning, please observe, this is so embarrassing. I actually even missed getting the shovel into the door. Go! I do want to say that when I did shovel the 4% grade, Steve Murphy's on this call, and he was on the crew ahead of me, so he and his fire crew stoked that fire up to like the temperature of the sun, so that when I stepped in to begin to shovel my turn, it was actually already very hot. So I really need to acknowledge Steve Murphy's firing efforts to stoke that fire really hot and prep for the grade. So what you saw was a pretty hot fire. That was a locomotive, a really hungry locomotive going uphill. Little engines eat very lightly when they go downhill. It's a very different kind of thing. And for the trip downhill from Antonito to Chama, I believe they were actually drifting for part of the way. So when you look at the video, see how different the temperature is in the firebox. You can actually see the coal in there. And the instructor is telling me where to throw the coal, to throw it on the cool parts, but that's not that easy. And at the end of this video, I also get some, it's fun, I get some coal tossing technique instruction.
Just start covering it all up. Yeah. Oh, they put the big ones in the back. Oh my God. That was a perfect pivot basket. I can't get these in the back. Sorry. No, right here, right in front of the door. That way you don't have to throw them all the way in the car.
Open the door to talk now.
Slide up the handle. Pardon? Let your hand slide up the handle. Yeah. I remember. That's why I asked you to do on that side. Closer to me? Slide up. Oh, okay.
I can't say enough about how great the instructors are in this program. I mean, they are so patient and helpful, and you saw them talking to me and kind of giving you tips on all sorts of things. It was really fun just guys. So one other thing we did in this run is we went over several trestles, and some of them are really scary, and it's kind of actually scary sitting in the cab looking down a really steep trestle because there's a lot of exposure. I don't have videos from that, but I do have a video from when I was in the gondola car. So that's the trestle, which is exciting. Another fun thing we did, and they do this just for the students, is we got to walk through the cut tunnel. There's two tunnels. One is, I think they call it a covered tunnel, but this one was a drilled tunnel. They stop the locomotive right before the tunnel, and then everybody who's not on that particular crew gets out, and we get to walk through the tunnel, which was really kind of fun. And afterwards, we got to stop at the far end of the tunnel and watch the locomotive coming through. And this time it was really fun because we were actually carrying a load for something. I think there was a flat car of rails. So I was very excited because I felt, wow, this is a real train. We're actually doing real work here. You can see the smoke coming out the top. Okay, so this next photo shows a steam blowdown. I actually took this the day after the steam school. I did a chase of the locomotive just to see what it looked like from the outside. The Doing the blowdown was interesting because they asked me to do it. I had a chance to do it, and I couldn't pull the stupid lever up off the floor hard enough. And everybody's saying, no, jerk it this way, or you need to give it an angle. But the neat thing about a steam locomotive is you can see everything. So I jumped out of the cab and I went to look where the valve was, and I sort of saw the linkage in a way, all the different joints attached and everything. And seeing that linkage made me understand how I had to pull that lever. And I went in and I did it, and it worked. It was easy. But so that's the really neat thing about steam. Everything is just out there for you to see. You know, it's nothing's hidden inside a computer. You can just really figure it out. The one thing I regretted is that I was never crewed during a water stop, and I would have liked to do that. So in this next video, you're watching, it's the same locomotive, it's engine 484 on an excursion, and actually you see another track above the track that she's on, and that's actually the same track. It's going to go, it's heading into a loop. I got to do that. So that's the steam blowdown. Also, I was told that this part of the route in the winter gets 10 to 15 feet of snow. So, and they do operate snow plows on the Cumbres and Toltec, and it's kind of cool to see. I mean, to see the videos anyway. I've never seen it live. They have a steam-driven rotary snowplow that they run. Here are just some other photos. This is a thing that they called the banana van. And the banana van was the way in which the students get from one end of the line to the other. Like if we go up to Antonito, they have to get us back. They take us back in the banana van. And the fun thing about this shot is that there's actually a buck walking through the yard. And he has a pretty good rack. You can't really tell because this was just my iPhone camera. So all kinds of interesting things happen on the Cumbres and Toltec. You get cows on the line, you get deer in the yard. This is just a shot of the Antonito yards. The other was the Chama yards. This is the Antonito yards. And this was just before our trip back from Antonito to Chama. And this was in the Antonito yards that the shop is that they do the reconstruction work, the renovation work. And this is, remember I said to watch out for little locomotive 168? They are actually refurbishing, or they were at the time we were there, 168, it was in the shop there. So this is that little Denver and Rio Grande locomotive. And this is the fire car and the fire car guys. I did meet a woman who had a summer job on this fire car, and she said it's absolutely one of the best jobs in the world because all you do is ride up and down the track all day. This beautiful scenery.
Kate, somebody asked a question. What was the temperature inside the cab?
You know, it was really hot, but I don't know how Steve felt about this. I never noticed it because I was so focused on what I was doing that it just, I was so nervous and so focused I didn't notice it. I know it was very hot. It was about it was probably in the 80s outside, so it was really hot in the cab. But the other thing is there was always a breeze going through, so there was that.
Great,
Okay.
thanks.
This is a photo of the crew. Um, it's everybody except, I think, except the conductor. I'm not sure the conductor is in this. And this is just me and 484. And, this little locomotive for me was, it's like your first love and your first car. This was my first real locomotive, and I just, I just love this little locomotive. And I have to say, this is one of the most fun things that I ever did. It's such a wonderful opportunity. Oh, I also have to say that Little Engine 484 is a movie star. She was in the movie Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Also, that the Cumbres and Toltec has had a lot of movies shot there when they need an old-fashioned locomotive. Very often they use the Cumbres and Toltec route. This is just some neat photos I came across while I was putting this presentation together. This is a triple header at a place called Windy Point, which doesn't actually look real, but I think I've never seen a triple header. I think this is just one of the coolest photos. I would love to be able to model this, but I don't have enough room for it. Yeah. But I just love this photograph. And here's 484 in some bad times. She derailed. Yeah, she derailed while snow plowing, and this was in 1999. And it took her, I think, 4 or 5 years. It took them 4 or 5 years to get her repaired and back, but of course she is. So there is a happy ending for this little locomotive. Here's another picture of the little 168. This was her in her heyday. And then she was neglected and spent a lot of time rotting in a park in Colorado Springs. And the Cumbres and Toltec didn't buy her. They leased her because Colorado didn't want to sell her. And they restored her. And look at this. So there's a happy ending. Here she is in her glory days. And here she is running again on the Cumbres and Toltec. And I believe this was October 1999. I think she was finished. I think that was the date. So happy times and happy ending. And this was my happy ending. I got my fireman certificate, and we all got these awards. And this is my souvenir. This is when I started the class, these were brand new deerskin gloves, and they were pristine. And this is what deerskin gloves look like after 3 days hand firing a coal-fired steam locomotive. So, it was gives you an idea of what it's like. And that's the end of my presentation, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate. That was a fascinating view of everything. So before we end the program here, the official part of the program, anybody on the panel who wants to ask any questions or make any comments? And I'm going to see if I can find a few people and just bring them in quickly. Since you've asked questions and I know you're. So Dave Peters, I'm going to put you on the panel. And
Kate, I thought that the shots inside the cab, particularly with you firing, and those were just super. I really like those a lot. Just wonderful.
for
Those-
Dave,
Those are done by a professional photographer. Every class gets a set of videos at the end, and those were done with a GoPro that was stuck to somewhere in the cab.
Yeah.
Great.
We did some shooting with a GoPro on the Wisconsin Warville and Farmington #9 a couple of years ago, and that was a lot of fun. But sure was a lot smaller engine than that.
Paul Hallett, I also moved you up to panelist, so if you want to jump, just unmute yourself. I know you've got a little bit of experience with the steam locomotive as well.
So Dave, there's a question somebody asked about opening the firebox doors, and they're
Oh, I didn't
actually
see that
air
one.
operated via pedal. So Kate is opening the firebox doors as she prepares to throw the coal into the fire.
Yeah, you
Right,
stomp.
yeah,
I
we
don't
could,
know if everybody could see, but I forgot to point it out. There's a pedal on the floor that you stomp.
yeah, we could actually see you sort of looking and making sure that you
Yeah.
were actually going to hit the pedal. So, and you know,
This is the hardest.
somebody made a comment in the chats about that the chunks of coal were so much larger than apparently are used in the East here. Do you know what type of coal it is? And, you know,
I did that, and Kate, what a great presentation. Thank
Oh,
you so much.
484. Look at your hat.
I put my hat on for you.
Oh, I couldn't get a 484 hat.
Oh yeah.
You were out of them.
I've been out there a couple times. Brian Messenger and I were out in August just before you got out for your school. We didn't do the school, but we were out chasing it for a couple of days. Yeah, the chunks are much larger. It's my understanding is it's mined much closer in that area, and so it's not as broken down as much as we use like on the valley where I am. And yeah, I saw you had Carlos in the cab with you.
Yeah.
What a wonderful man he is. Wonderful man. He takes time with everybody, and it's a great experience. If you have, for anybody watching who's not gone out there, highly recommend it. It is, and we went there, and we also did the Durango and Silverton. Both very good operations, but definitely you can feel the difference between the two.
Yeah.
The Cumbres is really, Kate, you got it. Really authentic, old school, with the modern touches, but just wonderful.
Dave, on that coal, that's a Colorado bituminous coal.
Okay, thanks.
And I've fired in Poland, and the chunks were every bit as big in Poland.
Really enjoyed it, Kate. I really,
Yeah.
And I used to be a cameraman. So,
There's a question on the chat about
well done.
somebody probably missed it earlier, that asking Kate whether she was going to do engineer in advanced, and I think the answer was yes, but she couldn't get in because it's booked too far ahead. Is that right?
Well, I was signed up for engineer this past June, but because of COVID, I didn't go. So I pushed it off to October. Now I'm scheduled for this next June. So we'll see.
Good. Hopefully things will work out well for that. I will say that just, looking at that whole experience, next time my wife and I go out west to visit her mother, which is in Phoenix, but it's a bit of a distance away, but that far across the country, got to go ride the Cumbres and Toltec. But watching you shovel that coal, my back was hurting just sitting here. That is not for me.
I trained, actually. I have a strength trainer, and I actually worked with a strength trainer on knee and back strength for that, believe it or not.
That was a good idea.
I think so.
Okay. Anybody else got anything to toss in before we end the formal meeting?
Just one more thing, Kate. I seem to remember that we spent a lot of time in the cab together, yet none of it was on video.
Yeah, I don't know why. Roger didn't get that. And
I don't know what happened.
Steve is my favorite firing buddy. Of all the people I fired with, Steve was my favorite. Well, one thing, he can hoist a lot of coal. I mean, you can see that, but I think he's had a lot of fun. We had a good time together.
How many people were in the cab at once?
Looks like 40.
There are
Let's see the angle.
there are 3 students, because they split the fireman students between the water station and the firing station, because it's too much to ask one naive student like me who doesn't have a clue to do both that. So there's two firemen, let's see, two firemen, an engineer, and two instructors, so 5 people.
So did you alternate between the water station and shoveling when you were in the cab?
Yeah, you switch. I forgot to say that you switch off you get about a 40-minute shift, and it's really up to the people what they want to do. They don't tell you to do, but usually you end up shifting around at around 20 minutes, so you get it half.
Okay.
half each place.
Yeah, and one thing I want to say is Kate mentioned about the brakemen and the conductors. They're working their butts off on that trip because brakemen especially, because what they're doing, and this is a whole new thing for me. You'll see on the outside of the wheels, you see a little white mark. And what they're looking for is to make sure the wheels are still turning, because they're putting retarders on the brakes and everything because of all the grades. And so they're leaning out over the side, looking down at the wheels all the time. And you'll hear, and also they do is one thing about out there is they use whistle signals a lot more. And yeah, it was just fascinating. Loved it.
Great. Quite unlike the Valley in terms of operating characteristics.
Yes.
Dave, are the brakes all manual on the Cumbres and Toltec? Or do they have air brakes or?
Oh, they have air brakes, but they use retarders to assist with that. That's all.
Uh-huh.
Kate, this is Paul Hallett. Were you able to get the coal up into the right-hand front corner of the firebox?
I don't think so. I to be honest, I could never get it all the way to the back.
Right.
I don't know if it was technique. I couldn't throw it that far. So when I had to get it to the back, then the fireman instructor would just do it for me.
Okay.
I had trouble aiming, but I'm not very good at aiming.
I noticed that when the instructor was shoveling there, and you could see he was getting the blade of the shovel further into the opening of the firebox.
That wasn't the instructor. That was Andy. That was one of the other students. But he had done it before.
Yeah.
He'd been fireman before.
But he had that, it was in further so he could give that twist to one side or the other. And when when you were doing it, it was pretty much just open the door and
Into the middle, yeah.
hope you hit the
That was so embarrassing. And, I felt, as the only woman, I felt I really had to do a decent job. And mostly I did, but, there were a few bad moments.
It was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Kate, Andy was fire engineering with me the last time I was there.
Oh, really?
Yes, Andy and Dan again.
Dan, wow. What happens in the school is people want to do it over and over, and so it becomes like an in thing. But the problem is then the people who've done it keep wanting to do it again, and it's harder for new people to get in, and that's why there's a wait list. It's really, really popular.
Yeah.
In fact, Andy and I split your engineering time. We paid for it, and we got extra time in the cab.
Oh, so they never, oh my goodness.
Yeah, they never filled the slot.
Okay.
They should have paid me.
I think, pardon me for interrupting, but I think what we're going to do now is end the formal program. And then, we actually got up to 89 people, including the panel and those attending the webinar. So that's really great attendance. So we're going to end the program in a minute, and we'll end the Facebook live stream and end the recording. But if folks want to stick around and chat a little further or ask any other questions, what we'll start to do shortly, we'll give it a few seconds after we end the meeting. So if you don't want to stick around, just leave the webinar. And if you do want to stick around and ask a question or whatever, we'll elevate you to a panelist so you can be part of the Hollywood Squares here. And just be patient, because I haven't found any way to do this en masse, so I have to let people in one at a time. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight, and I want to thank Kate for a wonderful presentation. If you want to see it again, it will be up on our Facebook page, and it's probably by tomorrow morning, it will also be posted on our YouTube channel, and there's links to both on the meetings page of the Mass Bay RE website. So again, thank you very much, Kate. A wonderful program, fascinating experience, and I'm sure we all want to, if we haven't been out to the West now, we want to do it. So